Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Rising Network and listening to our guest speaker today, Naili Mklangu, about driving your career forward. Today will take about an hour, so we should finish promptly at 1 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you. So my name's Rosa dos Santos, and I'm one of the chapter leads here in Cambridge of the Rising Network, and I run a business called Exact Sourcing in Cambridge, helping people find work and businesses grow and develop. So the topics that Naili's talking about today can really resonate, and I see a lot of this. So looking forward to that. So the agenda this morning is at 12 o'clock, the welcome by us at the Rising Network. 12:10, we should kick off the masterclass by Naili with some time for question and answers, and then we'll close at 1 o'clock today. So hopefully what you'll walk away with, you'll learn a bit about how to find out more about who you are, how you're going to develop the experience you need to go to that next level in your career, and how do you reinvent yourself and take more control of your future, and then really learn how you can have fun in the process. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Naili. Naili, welcome. She's the director and founder of Athena Leaders, and she's going to be sharing with us all about driving your career forward.
I'm really excited, and thanks again to the Rising Network for inviting me today. And one thing I love doing, especially at the beginning of the year, is to support other professionals when it comes to driving our career forward. This is a topic that I'm quite passionate about, as I get to share some of the framework that I've used throughout my life, just to inspire and motivate other people as well. I guess in terms of what I do, as Rosa said, I run a consultancy called Athena Leaders. In addition to just dealing with all the problem and organizational challenges, product development that I work with my clients, what really motivates and drives me is about this idea of embracing the play mindset at work. How can we structure organizations where people grow, develop, learn, and also achieve results, right? And that is really a core aspect of what I do through my work and also through my personal life as well. And I believe that one way of achieving that, to be able to play at work and play in our personal life, is to be happy with our career. As such, whenever I talk about careers, I like to emphasize the personal and also your personal and professional life, just to make sure that they are together and not separated as well. One of the key messages for anyone who wants to switch off right now, one of the key questions for you to take, that is the main question that I will drive throughout the entire talk today, is how much are you prepared to pay to get the career that you want? This is a bit of a heavy question sometimes. It's usually especially when I do this session in the room, there's always puzzles, look, and people wondering what the hell is she on about, really? So just to warm things up and warm your fingers up a little bit this morning, can a few people when I ask this question, how much are you prepared to pay? What are the first thoughts that are coming into your mind? If you don't mind popping into the chats, just to get us going and waking up a little bit. Spend time reading and developing, definitely. Time invested. Reading one book a month, again, is brilliant. It's time, money, time, and effort. Yep. Hard work, but keep my health and my balance and my family. Yeah. So definitely one thing that comes out of that, it's all about time and money, effort, family. There's so many aspects that we need to take into consideration when we look at our careers and how we want to develop it. So just to start, again, as Rosa said, we'll be taking questions at the end. But one thing I'd like to encourage you is to have pen, paper, or types, notepad or something. And if you can start writing down some of the questions, this is really going to be it's more like a self-reflection webinar. There'll be a lot of questions, some that you might not answer right away, but once you go after this session, you'll be able to think about it as you reflecting on what you want 2021 to be. To help you and to help my client in general, whenever I talk about career success, I like to work through a very simple framework and 4 different areas that I believe are very key and really important to succeed in your career. There's discovery, diversity, leadership, and playground. As Rosa said earlier, she was talking about play. Play is also a very important part of me. So whatever workshop I do, there's always an element of encouraging people to play. You're probably wondering, how does play and discovery and leadership has to do with career success? Well, stick with me until the end and you will find out. Now, when we start looking at discovery, it's really about understanding who you are at a very, very deep level. So some of the questions that I'm going to read out, and again, as I've said before, if you can write some of those questions down and really think a little bit about them after the workshop, that can help you as well on your personal journey to self-discovery. Who am I? What makes me tick? What motivates me? What do I want to achieve? How do I feel about my job? What would I rather be doing? Especially the last two questions, how do I feel about my job and what would I rather be doing, are very important questions. I've been on many workshops and I've trained on this subject a few times where people might answer how they feel about their job, but they might not know exactly whether what they're currently doing in the job is the appropriate one. As such, how do you know that you're enjoying or that you are growing and fulfilling the career that you actually want? So when we start looking at discovery and really want to go down deep into this idea of understanding ourselves just to make sure that we are living our professional life, there are two areas that to look at. The first one is the self-discovery. The second one is the career discovery. As I said before, we always have to manage our family, our personal life, our sport, our hobbies, work, and obviously the long hours. And obviously work takes the largest amount of our time, but we want to make sure that it's not just about success from a point of view of, yes, I've made, I've reached my financial goals, or I've reached my work goals, but my personal life, not so much. You'll still feel an unbalance. And it might actually, although you've reached your goals, you might not feel as fulfilled as you were if you've looked at planning your goals and including your own personal self into that as well. So that is why it's really important to get to that yay moment at the end of the year, knowing that you worked hand in hand from what do you feel inside of you and what you want for your personal life as well as your professional life. What can we do, or should we think about when you look at the self-discovery? Well, when we're thinking about self-discovery, I guess one question for you, what are some of the things that you can do or that you need to think about whenever you're trying to find out more about yourself? So again, if you want to use the chat windows for that. So what are the things that you can do really to when you start thinking about the self-discovery? What are my values? Yes. Brilliant, Zoe. That's the first bullet point on my list as well. It's really important to start by looking at your values. Your values drive absolutely everything that you do. For example, as a short story for me, when I did my work on my values, one of them has been freedom. And one thing I've noticed, going back, obviously I didn't know that when I first started my careers, but I was always attracted to jobs that allowed me to come to work whenever I want and leave whenever I want. Some of them might say, come anytime between 10 until about 10 o'clock. You can take your break whenever. And for me, it's always been really important because I love playing sport. I love doing other things. And it meant that if it was a beautiful, gorgeous morning in Cambridge and I fancied taking my racket sport and play, I will go and play tennis, then go to work, and I feel re-energized. And this way, even if I was doing long hours at work, I've always felt like I had the freedom to nip in and out and do what I need to kind of energize me and still do my 100% at work as well. So discovering your values, your interests are really important. And I also love the non-negotiables as well, which is something that will come on later on in the course. So other areas to look at in the self-discovery, we talk about personality types. That is going to be even more important as we move on to the leadership aspects, but understanding, being more self-aware is really important for you to know what kind of environments to go to and what to avoid, what motivates and what drives you. Now, most of you know all of this, so I'm only going to highlight one of the most important things that I think you need to really focus on, and a lot of people don't look at that, especially when they do personal work without a coach or without friends and stuff like that. And those are the limiting thoughts and behaviors. it's really important that you discover your blind spots, not just in terms of what are your weaknesses, but also in terms of what are the thoughts and what are the self-sabotaging actions that I do without realizing it. And why is that important? Well, whenever you want to get to a goal, or for example, you want to get a promotion, and if the promotion forces you, for example, if you become a manager, you will have to do a lot of more public speaking. Are there any thoughts there that's stopping you from applying for the promotion? You could be thinking, well, I've never been good at public speaking, and I will never be able to speak publicly. I'm not good at managing people, or I'm not good at putting my opinions across, or whenever I put my opinions, I'm always voted down. And the longer you stay with those ideas and those thoughts, whether you like it or not, there is always your subconscious that might help you to live in that bubble that you've created in your head, which means that you are deviating and not putting yourself forward to embrace the roles that might be coming up to your way as well. And this is a lovely model that I've used. I mean, for those who have been on my courses before, might have seen this. But for me, it's really important. And I always like to spend a couple of minutes on self-sabotaging and limiting beliefs, because what you experience, what negative feedback you might have had based on your skill sets or based on something that you experienced in you, creates some beliefs. And the longer those beliefs are part of you, if you believe that you are not a good public speaker, you will not take actions that you need to either improve your public speaking or to take on opportunities that will force you to speak publicly. This might result of being passed on for a role. Obviously, I'm using public speaking as an example, but that can apply to a lot of the things in life as well. So it's really important that when you identify your beliefs, you can then start pushing yourself and challenging yourself. And as part of your action plan, trying to find things to do so that you can change your action, your result will change, you'll feel so much better about it, and that will reinforce newer, better beliefs for you so that you can move forward as well. So in addition to that, once you've looked at yourself, look at your values, you cannot now move on and start looking at your career discovery. And this one, I'm sure many people will already understand roughly what I want to talk about it. It's really good to have an idea of your past, your present, and your future. So what were you doing? What have you done so far in your career? Especially after working for many years, we can sometimes forget some of the great experiences that we've had in the past. And it's always handy to have those kind of examples, especially if you're thinking about going for a new job, right? Those funny questions of, can you show an example of having demonstrated X, Y, Z? So it's really important to be very clear about what you've done, not just what your CV says, because sometimes we shorten our CVs to fit onto the 2 pages rules, but just to be able to see the richness of your own career as well. We talk a lot again about personality types, but here, when we start talking about from a professional aspects, we look at how do we work with others and how do we influence and collaborate more well with others, as this is going to be even more important in the future. One of the key things when I talk about a career, and again, something a little bit different for you to think about, is how many times do you regularly do a review of your careers, of what happened during the week? If you're aiming for a promotion, usually you will have some kind of performance review beforehand or a performance review at the end of the year. Yet performance review tends to be really stressful, especially at the end of the year when it's really stressful because everybody wants to finish off to go on holiday. And sometimes you might have done something in January and by December you have absolutely no idea. I know that because it happened to me so many times. And I'll go to performance review and my boss reminds me of something that I've done, which I didn't even know he actually did it. So what I started doing, and again, which I encourage people to do, is to be able to spend some time at the end of the week or even once a month to write down and to sit down and write down what you've achieved and what you've done, what you've learned. Because then at the end of the year, you can really look into that and you can see whether you've taken the action that you need to get the career or the promotion or to change jobs. You can see whether you've went above and beyond what is expected of your roles. And when you go into that performance review, you have it there and you have the example and you can nail your review and reduces the stress that you feel at that really critical, important moment for you as well. A second hack that I recommend to people, which this one, please bear with me, is a little bit, some people find it a bit weird, is asking yourself the question every 6 months, why am I still in this job? Okay, I'm not asking you to quit your job, especially in the middle of a pandemic. Could be a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. But what I really want to emphasize here is a little trick that I've done for myself for over the last God knows how many years now. I always tell myself that I'll quit my job. I said that right now I'm done with this job. And you, Naili, has to convince me to stay. The reason why I do that is just to help me when I do my own discovery journey and making sure that I'm going toward the right place. Many people stay in jobs because it's good and give them opportunities, or because it's comfortable and you have an amazing team and it's stable, or because you think you should be doing it. As Stephen Covey says, it's not just about climbing the ladder of success. It's not just climbing the ladder of your professional life, but you need to make sure that the ladder you're climbing is is leading you to the place you want to be. If you're staying in a job and going after promotion and promotion, and you get to the top and realize that, do you know what? Okay, I'm happy, but this is not what I wanted to do. But if you never challenge yourself whilst you're doing that, you would have spent a long time in your life. So if halfway you decide that maybe you want to climb another building, then the earlier you know about that, the earlier you can start planning and put the actions in place for you to jump off and go to another place as well. One of the reasons why I asked myself the question in terms of I've quit the job rather than I'm staying is that it really challenges me and removes any kind of attachments, especially when I worked for Siemens in industry software as a software engineer. I had an amazing team and they were amazing. You can come to work what time you want. We had great bonuses and great company. It's really, really good culture. And sometimes it's easy to stay because it's so much fun. And whenever I quit my job mentally, I will ask myself really important questions such as, what have I learned? What else can I learn? Is there an opportunity for growth for me? Am I still happy to remain as an engineer? And although I spent many years at Siemens Industry Software, asking myself this question meant that I pivoted and moved on to many different levels, either management, project management, DevOps, and it's so many other things, because every time I felt like there's something I want to learn, but it's not here, I speak to my boss, and then we work through that as well. So again, it's just a trick, but just to encourage you to think a little bit about what do you want from your career, rather than letting life happen or career happen. Really think about that as what can I do to influence where I am, to influence the changes that I want to make into my life. I hope this makes sense. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat window, and we will kind of review them towards the end as well. So this really, just to summarize a little bit, what we've looked at so far is about the self-discovery and the career discovery. They go hand in hand to make sure that you are happy as an individual, as your happiness at home always leads to more happiness at work, and vice versa as well. And if you're thinking in terms of some kind of tools that you can use to do this, you've got personality types, mentoring, getting feedback from people, goals elicitation work. But please make sure you spend the time to do limiting beliefs and blind spots. I do a lot of coaching and mentoring as well to help people go through that. But if you rather do it on your own, or you don't want to approach any other coaches around where you are, I would suggest that you don't do the limiting beliefs and the blind spot work on your own. Find a trusted friend to do it. When something gets uncomfortable, we tend to start and stop and don't really go. And maybe and sometimes as well, our beliefs are so ingrained in us that we actually believe it, that it's the real truth. I'm not good at public speaking. Whereas if you are going to the list with some friends, again, someone that you trust, they can challenge you and ask you questions such as, why do you believe that? Have you ever tried speaking in public? Do you think that if you take courses, it will change? This way, you are a lot more aware of what you need to do so that you improve your career life as well. And don't forget to ask yourself the same question: why am I still in this job? I hope that this just gives you a bit of an idea and a flavor of what you can do to start already. By the time you get to the end of doing your self-discovery and career discovery work, you will have a lot of information about yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, your values, your goals, your desire. And so you can start analyzing your life and double check whether you are in the right path, what you need to change, and start looking at an action plan for yourself and how you want to move on in the future. And yes, I know that this takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to do, especially when you do it on your own and you have family and kids and work and hobbies and travel and. However, as I've said before, the most important question is how much are you prepared to invest in understanding yourself in order to get the career that you want? It's all about making the commitment and signing on the check, as nobody can ever do that for you to get where you want to go. I hope you're still with me. Yes. Okay. So next, we're going to start looking at diversity. Diversity is especially at the moment, is such a big topic out there. And it's also a big topic in career. As you can see, with everything that's happening, the landscape of work is changing rapidly. Automation has been a threat in so many industries. And with the remote working, new opportunities will arise, where before competition in certain was limited to a certain areas. Now companies will be able to hire from all over the country, all over the globe. So what does it mean in terms of competition for you? Rather than fear competition or fear automation, one thing that I've always suggested and I've always done in my life is to think about how can I diversify my skill set so that I always have something extra and I can swap around whenever I need it to. And in a way, one important question that I ask, again, if this is something that you want to write down so that you can think about that later on, is what is your unique selling points? I know it does sound a bit marketing kind of thing, but I genuinely believe that every single one of us has a unique selling point, something that we do well. But then how do we identify our unique selling points if you're not really sure what it is about? To answer that question, I will share with you a little secret. I love dancing. I put my hands up. I'm the kind of person, I've already said, I'm gonna be a bit like a Bruce Forsyth kind of person. Even when I'm in my 70s, my 80s, if I can be allowed in with my ID in a nightclub with a cane, I'll be there. That's why I am. And one of the best nightclub, and the first time I discovered Madrid was years and years ago. My brother was living here, and it wasn't in Madrid, and he took me to a nightclub. It was a 7-story nightclub. And it really blew my mind away. And I don't think I've ever had the same experience ever again. Every single floor had different types of music. So when you come in on the ground floor, you get this standard chart music that you get in most clubs. Then on the first floor, you get something like salsa and Latin music. Then you go up, you have a bit of getting down into reggaeton. Then you go up, you have rock music, again, different tempo and different change. And they even had a cocktail place for people who want to go clubbing, also wants to talk, so that they can just go up. There's barely any music there. It's very quiet. So you can sit down, get a cocktail. And by the time you're really drunk and you feel like spending money for whatever reason, there's a floor to sell that sold merchandise as well. So it was really varied. And what I love, one of the things I like going there is when you're in a big group and I don't really know what they like, I just go there, take them there. And if I want to enjoy different types of music, because my tastes are as varied as my hobbies, I also like going there. Now, why do I make the point? This experience for me is, again, one of something that I really enjoyed, and even thinking about that right now, I feel like putting my dancing shoes one day after this whole thing is over. But I think it's also really important to start thinking about your career as a multi-story building. Now, what do I mean by that? I will very, very quickly, because normally when I do this as a long workshop, I work with people to really start building the blocks of the multi-story building. So I built mine, and I thought I share it with you just to kind of explain what I mean by that. In a world where we are expecting to do a lot, and we're expecting to do a lot more, a lot of people talk about leadership as well. A lot of people talk about being able to be an engineer, but also being a manager, which sometimes in engineering, there's not many courses that the many managerial or soft skills courses. So how do you develop the skills for that? So we are now moving into a world where it's expected to know quite a lot, a little bit more outside of your niche or the area that you are in. And what I've done throughout my life is to really start at ground zero And I've developed different flows with different skill sets. So at the beginning, obviously it's university and school, your values. Then I started my career as a software engineer. Now I work as an interim manager. I do project management and leadership, building relationship, and so much more. But this didn't happen just in one day, right? So when I was putting that, I was like, oh, okay, I've done quite a lot. But it's not like I did it just in one day. And there are some flaws. You can think about all the skill sets that you have, or all the skill sets that you want to have. It doesn't mean that you need to be perfect at everything, but you need to just be aware that you have something in there. So, for example, you could have a building relationship skill flow where think a bit about how you're building a house. You don't make every single floor and layer completely perfect. You first start by focusing on one layer. When I was a software engineer, I made sure that when you go into my flow, that had my software engineer flow, it was well decorated and everything was spot on. But my leadership flow, well, I could talk to people. I was good at delegating, but I didn't really hone my skills at that time. But I had something that if for whatever reason someone was to ask me to take on a role, I had something to lean on. And that's really what I'm trying to say, really. It's about thinking about all the skills that you have, map it down in writing, and trying to think about what score would you even give yourself for each flow, and where do you think you need to improve? We have limited amount of time, right? So yes, I want to improve leadership. I want to improve, I don't know, project management, X, Y, Z. But what is going to be your focus for the next few months based on the goals that you've set for yourself as well? So that's really kind of what I'd like you to really think a little bit about as well. Now, once you've created your own multi-story building, you've listed your skill sets, bearing in mind that by this point, you've already done a lot of work for yourself, self-reflection work for yourself as well. You can now start thinking about your selling point. What is your unique selling point? And even before me starting my own business, my unique selling point, especially towards the end of my employed career, at the time, was that I was a software engineer that was really good with people, that could also manage projects, manage team, and could speak publicly as well. So I could train. Although I did most of those for fun, but that was something that whenever I apply for a job, especially in small companies, they're like, okay, we need a project manager, but we have issues with our customers. I'm like, oh, don't worry. I'm really good at making people happy. So I can handle it. I know how to build relationship and build trust. So although they wanted the project manager, but they wanted someone who also they might not have thought about wanting that kind of skills, but it's something that I can talk about. And once you know what a unique selling point is, it's such a strength because you can use that when answering questions during interviews, when filling application forms. They might not ask for those skills that are part of your unique selling points, but well, why not talk about it? It's not really bragging. It's really about highlighting another strength that you have so that anyone reading your CVs, looking at your application, doing a performance review, they can see another aspect of you that they might not be aware of as well. For those wondering, okay, well, I'm looking at my building, I've done that, and there are some flaws that I'm not really happy about, or that I've started, maybe I need a bit more plastering and decoration. What do I do? Now, I always encourage people to craft experiments. Pick what you want to learn, and remember that there are two ways of learning. There's obviously reading books, going into seminars and everything else, but there's also learning by doing. What you learn by doing, you tend to do a lot more because it stays with you even more so than what you learn by just reading as well, because you develop your own experience and your own beliefs and stuff like that. And how do you do that? Well, it's about creating new opportunities for yourself and really thinking outside of the box. And my favorite one is Volunteer Your Way to the Top, which is a Pechakucha talk that I gave a few years ago. And if anyone is interested in a 7-minute talk, I can send you the link. When I used to craft experiment for myself, I mean, for those who don't know, I used to be extremely, extremely shy, and I used to have a lot of self-anxiety, so social anxiety, which meant that being in public with people, let alone public speaking, I wouldn't even dream of public speaking, that's another level. But just being outside, I struggled to look up and look at people. So I started experimenting on myself by taking small things and get myself outside of my comfort zone little by little until where I am today. I started by, YMCA and helping with computers and helping teach people how to use them, which was at the time, every time I had to go, was really nervous because people would be looking at me and I had to talk to them. I even went to, at one point, I volunteered for St. John's Ambulance. And again, anything health related, if I was a doctor, as soon as you try to put pressure on, when someone says, oh, it hurts here, I put pressure, and they say, oh, it hurts, I'll probably stop and I'll probably give them a hug. So me, can't be a doctor. But one of the reasons I went for St. John's Ambulance is because when they attend an event and something happened, you have to be decisive and speak louder. And I used to struggle with speaking out loud. So I thought, okay, if I go there, it's going to push me to do that. So I did. And it was scary at the time, but I really got a lot out of that. And another way of volunteering, there's so many organizations. I mean, I was president of other nonprofit out there, with where I learned a lot. And even something like the Rising Network, as Rosa was saying earlier, you can be a chapter leader if you wanted to learn, just experiment with leadership skills. But if you don't have the time, is it possible to approach one of the chapter leaders and help with anything? For example, if you take me way back, something like introducing a speaker was extremely nerve-wracking for me, let alone running a full webinar, right? So I started by just introducing speakers. It was just 2 minutes. People will look at me and feel like I'm going to die, but eventually you get better at it. And so you're improving your skills a little bit at a time as well. So if you do all of that, if you really think, again, by this point, you should have a list of your goals, your strengths, your weaknesses, and where you want to go. And you start looking at how you can start creating and crafting your experiments so that you create a multi-story building. And it's also important to say that sometimes do it for fun as well. It doesn't have to be done just for a purpose. For example, I became a trainer just because I always wondered what it felt like to train. So I signed up to learn how to become a trainer. I ran a lot of courses. I won an award as best trainer in 2017. And a couple of years later, I started my own business and now I'm training. But of course, if you had asked me when I first started, I was just like, well, I felt like my training building was too empty. So I wanted to plaster, and eventually it's now well decorated. I still enjoy training as it is at the moment as well. I'm sure you know what's coming next. And another question for you. So how much are you prepared to invest in diversifying your skill sets in order to get the career that you want? And again, it's really about thinking about your selling points, your multi-story building, and what you can do to develop the skills that you need as you're moving forward. Now, there's only 2 parts of the framework left, but they are very quick and very simple compared to the other ones. Because by the time you get to this point, by the time you've done the work on the self-discovery and the career discovery, you would have learned so much about yourself. Just doing that, even if you stop here and says, you know what, Naili, too much work, I've had enough, you still would have made progress and starting to think about how you can change 2021 so that by the time you get to the end of it, you are sure that you are going to where you are going through where you wanted to, you are fighting your limiting beliefs and going for the promotion, the change of jobs, and even asking for a better salary if that's what you want as well. But what does the leadership aspect add to this framework? Now, again, it's really about standing out from the crowd. And when I talk about leadership here, I do a lot of work with leaders, but I also do a lot of work with people who want to be leaders or who might not even want to be leader, but just wants to understand what it is. For me, leadership is not just a position of authority. It's how do you go from picture A, where there's chaos, or people are not getting along, you are not finalizing a project, or you're not finishing what you're working together as a team, to point B, where there's harmony with the team. And sometimes it might not necessarily be the manager who holds the key to the harmony of a team. You could just be the catalyst, the person who knows how to influence other people, how to facilitate the sessions, how to facilitate meetings so that people's views are heard. Again, not necessarily leadership, but it's something that I believe is really, really important. How do you develop the emotional intelligence to learn and connect with people without authority? And one thing that you will realize when you have that skill set is something that you can use over and over during performance reviews, because it's something extra that maybe was not asked of you, especially if you're not a part of the leadership team or management or something like that as well. Now, when we look at the leadership, what are some of the ways that you can think you can improve? Well, emotional intelligence, we have already talked about that. The other one I like to emphasize, and I'm doing a talk next week on women leadership, empathy and vulnerability. How do you use your empathy and vulnerability to lead more strongly without feeling that empathy and vulnerability is a weakness? And that might not always be easy. That's something that I really struggled with, because I used to believe that being strong meant not showing any signs of distress or weakness or anything. But it's pretty much, how do you open up some aspect of your story, some aspect of your feelings, so that other people can connect to that and believe that it's okay for them to also open up and connect with you as well. That is even more important right now, because a lot of people are working from home. We don't know how long it's going to be. Some parents are homeschooling as well. And I had a workshop with doctors in November, and we had to work on empathy and vulnerability. And for them, it was the first time that they've managed to, I mean, they work together really well. They're used to talking to the clients, but they never really talked between each other to see how stressful this period has been, and think about how they can improve and bring more fun into their lives as well. So again, one thing I like to believe, that as women, we already have one step on empathy and vulnerability, because we tend to connect a lot stronger. And it's just something that's not recognized, but I feel like we deserve to have at least that skills already sorted for us, which is amazing. The other one that I will highlight on this list, I'm not just going to read everything else, is manage your managers. Managing upward is really, really important. If you know how to manage your manager, you can really be able to, it's a bit like, our dreams. If someone can come to you with all the answers, that'd be amazing, right? So you're thinking about someone, you're working with an assistant and give you the answers. And that's what managing your managers is. And one thing I've done a lot, and what I in my career, is really to understand what are the struggles of a manager and how can I help. If I want a promotion, I have to show that I can go above one level. Well, if I have a manager, especially a supporting one, I remember how I moved from software engineering to project management was because we were running a project with people in 2 different continents, not even countries, but continents. And we didn't have the basic of project management set up, and the communication was really difficult. I will write my code and someone will write something else. And then the next morning I come in, my work, what I wrote doesn't work because of a change that happened somewhere else. And what I understood was that the person managing the project didn't have the time to keep his eyes on all the pieces. So I went to him and asked for a small part of the cake that I will manage. Then 6 months later, I went back to him and says, do you know what, how about you become the technical lead and I'm the project manager, and we work together closely. And he completely changed how the organization was working, because we could deal with a lot of the frustration that every single one of my colleagues were doing as well. So this idea of managing and really understanding what is it that your manager needs and wants, where are they struggling? And also, as I've talked before, there are some managers that could be really good at managing, but they might not always be really good with things like getting the team to work remotely really well. And if it's a skills that you have, hey, why don't you speak to the manager and see how you can support them by bringing the team together over a Zoom chat or a Zoom coffee or something like that. But again, by showing your leadership skills without authority. It requires a lot of emotional intelligence. And the more you learn and understand that, the better you will be in terms of being noticed at work as well. Now, before we move on to the next one, again, it's the same question over and over. How much are you prepared to pay in order to develop the leadership skills you need to get the career that you want? Now, to finish off, playground. And that is where the fun happens. I believe strongly in turning my life and my workplace into a playground. And that is something that I'm 100% passionate about, that even the tagline of my company is to embrace the play mindset at work. Because I think it's really important that we start viewing work as this place where we achieve, we perform, we beat the competition, but we also laugh and have fun and have a great community behind us. And how do you turn your life into a playground? This idea of not compromising, see, by the time you get to this point, again, you've done a lot of work on yourself to know what your values are and to know what drives you and to know what you want out of your life. If someone were to ask you what would be your ideal life, how would you be describing it? And when you look at that, which aspect of that do you not want to compromise on? So that every single time that you look for a job, you know what are the key things that you can't compromise on. As a simple example, for me, is freedom. I love the freedom to work. Some people say it's 9 to 5. I prefer working 7 to 3 because at 7 o'clock in the morning, my mind is flying and I've got loads of energy. I just want to get going and get to work. So if I have to work somewhere that says, no, you can only come at 9, I feel like I've wasted 2 hours of where my brain is fully engaged. And so that's why I always, everywhere I go, even if they have some kind of 9 to 5, I go to the boss and says, hey, this is how I work best. How can you make it fit within the structure of the organization? So knowing what is not to compromise. And another aspect of not compromising, again, is even now I'm running my business. But for me, one of my challenges or my goals in the next 2 years is to be fluent in Spanish. So I have being fluent in Spanish as my personal play. Maybe it will be relevant for work one day, maybe never, but that's part, again, when we talk about being your life is not just a professional one, but personal place to learn Spanish. So I don't want to compromise on that. So whenever my life becomes really busy, I might drop my Spanish lessons, but I know I put something in my calendar and said, hey, you promised me you're going to do that. You're really good at telling other people not to compromise. Why are you compromising, right? So it's just a way of making sure that I actually do what I recommend my clients and other people to do as well. So for me, it's really about making the time for me to enjoy my life so that I don't just when I look at my career success, I also know that the other part of my life is also being looked after. The other thing I'm going to emphasize in this slide is really about the gamifying aspect of it. And again, so many of the experiences, even when I was talking about crafting experiments, the moment that becomes work, you completely lose it. You have to have some kind of fun and really enjoy what you're doing. And an experiment doesn't, or even a development journey, you don't learn, it takes a while to learn certain skills. So if you really want to go to one event and you say, oh, well, now that I've done that, I'm an expert, you're going to burn out. It's pretty much like learning the piano. It can be difficult, but it's also enjoyable. So whatever you're doing, make sure that you're laughing and that you're really, really looking forward to connection rather than just being able to tick a box and move forward as well. So once you've done that, make sure that even in your calendar, you have time to start looking at what play means for you and what play means at work as well, and make it happen for yourself as well. So I'm pretty sure you know what the question is going to be for this one. How much are you prepared to pay in order to turn your life and workplace into a playground? And the best part, I forgot to mention that the best part of playground is also reminding yourself that once you get to a milestone, however small it is, you reward yourself and have fun, because otherwise, what is the point? We are now at the end of our session. I hope you enjoyed. We're about to start the Q&A. Just as a quick reminder, we looked at the 4 different categories that will help you, the 4 different parts of the framework that will help you to think about your career in a different way and really sign on the dotted lines. If you want to buy a house, it's a long process and it's possible that you fail, but you start paying so much money on pretty much everything, on lawyer's fee, on searches and stuff like that. But you might not get there at the end, but you sign on the dotted line and you start on the process. And the same happens with any kind of personal growth or professional growth as well. Now, for anyone who might be interested in working with me, especially in January, I tend to run 6-week program where I work with people who are interested either on the one-to-one or as a group, and pretty much go to the entire process so that at the end of the 6 weeks, they have a clear vision plan, what they want to do for this year, know about their limiting beliefs and how they're going to smash it in 2021, and especially beyond 2021 with a smile on the face. And some of the key things for you to remember, if there was just a quick takeaway, again, just think a little bit about emotional intelligence, leading without authority, this idea of crafting experiments and your unique selling points. But more importantly, please don't forget to laugh, because, it's good for the soul and it's great for your mental health as well.
Thank you so much, Nelly. That was really fantastic. And a good reminder of the things that hold us back. I mean, we're more than just one thing. And when you were talking about that club, and I could actually hear the music and the different levels, and that actually that visual was reminded me that actually taking control of the areas that I want to, really starting with thinking about, what's important to me and where do I go and the things that I can actually do, even if it's small things that we can make. Does anybody have any questions for Nelly? And yeah, please, we'd love to hear that. And this is for you, for us to be able to support you and sharing really does help with building that. And it's when I'm meeting and interviewing people, Nelly, it's funny because I meet a lot of people that have just gone into roles and gone from one thing to the other and ended up doing a job and then they're made redundant. Now what? So we start right at the beginning. So if you can actually arm yourself with that self-discovery journey and finding out what your USPs and, ask somebody else that knows you.
Yeah. And it's actually quite important to also stress when you're looking at your discovery journey or USP that it's not just about new skills. It could just be about reinforcing what you already have and also about discovering what you have that you don't know about. Because a lot of people do things really well, especially when you're naturally good at doing something. You don't see that as a skill because well, you do it well. But if you are more aware about that, then you can really use that when you go for interviews or performance review and so on.
That's great. So with regards to a very common question is, Rosa, but what should I learn? So they come to me and they're wanting a change. Where's a good place? What is it with the questions that to start with? I mean, I always suggest to them, start with something that you enjoy, because if you enjoy the subject matter, you'll do well in it. What's your advice,
For me, I guess it depends on what do you want and what do you want it. Again, it goes back to first understanding, for example, if you want to do a career change, understanding what the kind of thing that you like, and can you turn a hobby, like people say, turn a hobby into your own business as well. Are there skills that you have that you can start making money out of it? As I said before, I started training for fun and I use that as part of my work. So the starting point for learning something new can be about something that is just your interest. I've always wanted to know about artificial intelligence. I'm going to read about that. There's nothing wrong with that. Or it could be once you've done, again, first start by doing a bit of an intake on your life and realize that there's a weakness and you want to improve on the weakness as well. So it's really about either you pick something just for fun, for a hobby, for an interest, nothing wrong with that, or for a purpose as in furthering my career at the moment or in the future as well. So for example, if you're in IT as a software engineer, one thing that you always need to do is to be aware of all the new trends because application and languages move really quickly. So if you are an engineer, even for fun, it's great to be in the practice of trying different things. Now, I don't know how that translates in other fields, but if your field is a fast-moving one, it's best to start reading up about it, start reading up about the new changes that's coming up way before you even need it so that you avoid the panic mode when you actually want to make a change.
Yeah. So Anne says she's 64 and was made redundant and been doing an online life coaching course that she hopes that she can help build a business, perhaps helping others that are over 60. And then Sarah commented on that saying, great, Anne, I was speaking with a candidate this morning in the same situation. So I'm sure there'll be others that are of interest. And Gail wants to know, do we have any tips on how to encourage the playground element in work when everyone working virtually? I agree, it's so important to remember to make work enjoyable, but find it very difficult virtually. Good question.
Yeah, and you can do that through, I think the way you start looking at the playground is, first of all, do you have all the structure that you have within the business so that you can work and collaborate better? So if you have a team where people don't trust each other, there's no point talking about play because they won't feel confident to even be open and honest. And that's where you start. So you need to think about why is it that people are not engaging? It could be because of time. Some people are struggling with Zoom and struggling with time. If time is the only issue and you already have a team that are great together, is there a way to work with the manager and say that maybe once a month, rather than have a normal team meeting, you change it up a bit and put some aspect of play and getting to know other people within the team? There are many online games that people are creating these days. It could be something like a charade, or it could be, those locks. I always forget the right name for that. The lock rooms, lock houses. You have 60 minutes to do puzzles, and now you can get them for like 20 quids on many places online. And this brilliant way of getting to know your coworkers and doing something a bit different, so that you can engage people as well. But it's also important to understand that when you talk about the playground, you also need to know how others within the team feel, and how you can build a relationship with them first, so that they can open up and be willing and agree to play with you as well.
That's really great, Nelly. It'd be nice to have that link. I don't know what games that was, but that sounded fun.
Yeah.
It sounds like all I do want to play. I promise I do work. So Yo Yang wanted to know a little bit about, can we explain more about breaking through limiting belief? Does limiting belief mean something which we believe in we can't do?
Yes. So pretty much it's about what do you think about that stops you from going where you want to go. So for example, as when you're much younger and you get that quite a lot, you want to go in a field like, for example, software. A lot of people also come to me and says, oh, I wish I did software before, but I'm not good with numbers. What does not being good with numbers mean? Is it that you don't enjoy maths? Is it that you genuinely believe that you can't do any maths? And in fact, a lot of young women that I speak to, especially when I mentor, they come to me and says, I'm not good with number. I will never do, tech or anything like that. And my feedback is, well, actually, I've never used numbers in software, because it depends on the field that you do. So having those ideas that, especially when you tell yourself that I'm not good at this and I will never be able to do this, or when just trying to think about examples, it's really anything that stops you from going where you wanted to. So think about, what is the next step in your career, or what is that you want to achieve? For me, even in personal life, I used to think that I was never good at walking, because I can't walk for more than an hour, because I hated it. Then I went hiking and I absolutely loved it. But for many years, I never tried it because of the beliefs that I had. Now at work, it happens a lot as well. So whenever you want to do something and you have all those negative thoughts. In fact, if you want to find out your negative beliefs, I know that can be quite challenging to do, but sit down and list all the negative thoughts that you have. Every time even if you don't want to do it at the end of the day, whenever you're working or something happens and says, oh, I'm never going to be good at understanding how spreadsheets work. I will never understand how Google work. I will never understand how this works. Write it all down and challenge yourself and ask yourself, why are you not good at it? Why do you think it's not good? It could be that you're not interested. That's fine. Just drop it. But it could be that it's something that you are repeatedly telling yourself in your head, that whenever they come up, you don't take the opportunity to challenge yourself and trying to do it, and it could be stopping you as of where you want to go.
That's a very good point. And actually, there's a quote that I found is, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right.
Yes,
and I think just
exactly.
really thinking about those words are important. Thank you, Nelly, so much. And thank you, everybody.